hand over to Aidan from our platforms team and Mike from our architecture team to tell you about how they designed the AI we saw tonight and how we're using AI here at BJSS. Please welcome them.
Right, cool. Thank you all for coming back, I guess. So I'm Aidan Baines. I'm the platform capability lead here in Leeds. This is Mike.
And I'm Mike Winter. I'm a technical architect, one of the principal technologists in Leeds. Been at BJSS for a while now, 2014 I think I started.
Cool, so first of all, you're all cheating and you've been bullying my robot. The first one I didn't get, and I know what all 30 catchphrases are, so well done to whoever that was. It does work. It wasn't a video. I heard some of the comments wandering around. It genuinely works. It's not very good, but it genuinely does work. There's the next slide. Good. So basically, the thing struggles because language is hard. Typically, idioms and common phrases don't particularly translate very well. Anyone who speaks a second language or English is their second language will know sarcasm, idioms, that don't work. Here's everyone's favourite dictionary definition from Merriam-Webster. Feel free to read that, or don't. Here are some catchphrases we've got from our colleagues around BJSS who speak other languages. I don't, so apologies for this section. The first one is Greek, sit on your eggs. I'm not going to try and pronounce that, which means relax, don't do things in haste.
The next one is Chinese. It says, I am reliably informed, to mark the boat to find one's sword.
There is English written below.
Yeah. And it means use a daft solution or to stubbornly stick with an approach despite challenges in circumstance.
Yeah. This one we've got some French for staircase wit, or figuring out a witty comeback as you walk down the stairs and out the door, away from the discussion.
And then we got Iceland, the raisin in the end of a hot dog, which is a pleasant surprise or the highlight of a day or experience. If you like raisins, obviously.
I've never had that at IKEA. And then we've got an Irish saying for scarlet at your mother for having you. Basically, that was so dumb, I'm embarrassed for your mother having been related to you.
And then we've got one from the Netherlands, which is, unfortunately, peanut butter. Which means too bad.
I've been reliably informed that that's because it rhymes and it's fun to say. Cool.
Right, so Azure. So I originally had this slide. I originally had this slide, and we were going to talk about it in a slightly different way, but we're going to go off-piste a bit based on the kind of conversations that we heard during the game show. So there's a bunch of stuff. This slide there's a bunch of cognitive services in Azure, and that's what we used. Predominantly we used Vision, and we used the OpenAI service. And so what we did is we roll the image through Vision, ask it to kind of detect some things, and then based on those things, craft a sentence or a saying or a thing, and then go back to the OpenAI chatbot, ChatGPT, right? And say, give us a well-known English idiom. And there's a bunch of other stuff that we could have done that, of course, we've got day jobs and we've got families and it's very difficult to get it all in. We've got some problems and some of the things that it's not good at, we'll discuss it in a bit, but we could have rolled those responses that we got from the Vision AI through some of the other things. So like we could have translated these texts or said, go through, convert this to English, British English, not American English. And so the regionalization piece was one of the issues that we had. And we'll get to that in the next slide.
Cool. So what we built didn't particularly come across very well because you're all catchphrase masters. But ultimately there's a front end for an application, as is typically the case, where we just create a nice catchphrase style image. We pass it into the front end when we put it in some blob storage. For those that are not aware of Azure, blob storage is a service where you can store things, images being one of those things you can store.
But binary large objects, right?
That's the one, yeah. Fantastic. Stuff. We put stuff in the blob storage, and that gives us back a URL for of the stuff. We pass the stuff into Azure's machine learning workspace as part of their cognitive services suite. It will then go and grab the image and look at the image and go, oh, that's a cartoon of a circle with the word magic written on it and a car. Good. It's really good for generating things like alt text for images. Not so good at catchphrase. We then, for those who have experienced ChatGPT, we do a little bit of prompt engineering. So behind the scenes, we've kind of told it it's playing a game. These are the rules of the game. We're going to say, oh, here's an image that could be a catchphrase. Could you give me back the catchphrase? No, that is an ITV registered trademark. Can you give us an English phrase that's like this, please? Yes, no problem. So we wrap some text around it. We found that including any actual words that it found in, so magic in this case, scape in the case of scapegoat, junk in the case of junk mail, include those at the end, it has a much better chance of finding the right answer. Say, give me an idea, oh, magic roundabout, grand. Passes it all the way back through, displays it in that little blue box that we saw on the front end, and that's its guess. What we didn't see is any of that, because you got it in the first click. So that's what should have happened. We're going to play a second game of it, but we're going to control it so you can see what should have happened. Very, very Blue Peter-esque. I'll go back over there and do that.
I'll let you do that, yeah. So what you lost in the game show was the complexity behind how the AIs interact with the things that we're giving it. So this one, we've set it up, and this is Scapegoat, right? And so Scapegoat, we'll talk about this in what it did well and what it didn't do well. And Aidan's just going to click through some of these things, and you'll see on the right-hand side, on that little blue circle, this is the response from the Vision AI sending data into ChatGPT. And so it's saying a close-up of a logo, right? And it's reasonable, I guess. It's a reasonable guess. Now it sees scape. And it doesn't know, catchphrase is like a multi-faceted discipline. It's not just one thing. It's not recognizing an image in a picture, which is what AI is really good at doing. It's trying to convert, and we're using multiple AI tools to try and play a game of catchphrase, which AI is not very good at catchphrase. And so I don't know what it says, but we've got a channel, and it's sending these to Slack. And it'll probably have said something along the lines of an animal with the word goat, with the word scape. And so it just went, oh, well, scape. But this time it's like, it's probably sent goat, give me a well-known English idiom with the word goat and the words scape. And it goes, oh, scapegoat, because it's kind of synonymous, right? So it's reasonable, this particular image. And so that's kind of an insight into how it's actually working. So if we flip back to this, we'll get to the what's worked and what hasn't. Why is it not working?
Sorry?
Next slide.
I'll give it some points. You might have noticed I felt bad for it. So what actually worked during that exercise, other than the game not doing?
Not as much as you'd think. Crafting system-level instructions for ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is much more complicated than you'd think kind of initially. It's not just the thing that you see. Oh, I say ChatGPT. It's actually not ChatGPT, is it? What's the? Yeah, it's some OpenAI thing. But there's the one you see in the web, the interface where you ask it questions. It's far more complicated than that. And that interface they've set up with what they call system-level instructions. And so when you pass those system-level instructions to ChatGPT, you get a reasonable discussion with it. So when we didn't have those and we were trying to send it this one phrase, because bearing in mind, we've slammed this together in about 6 weeks, we were trying to give it a phrase that was all-encompassing. And that did not work very well at all. So by breaking it down and saying, look, don't give me any information that I don't care about. I don't need to know that goats have been around since 1000 BC. I don't care about that. And I don't care that goats climb trees, right? So don't give me any of that. And give me just the one-word response. Also, you should be working in British English, because this is not an American game show. And everything in IT is built for the American kind of industry. And so setting up system level instructions, they work really well. Also, training our own models. So it kind of worked well, depending on what your definition of working well is. So we trained it with the images that we could get for Catchphrase. But for Scapegoat, which is a great example, there's like 3 different Scapegoat images. You can't train an AI model on 3 images. It's not possible. The AI just becomes completely obsessive with goats, right? And so we trained it with these 3 images, and then we chucked through a load of other images, and it said, right, we threw a rabbit with a carrot in its mouth. And it was like, it's an animal. Oh, yeah, it's definitely Scapegoat. I'm 99.95% certain that this is Scapegoat. It's like, and it would also do pixel detection too. So even if it couldn't even tell. So when you see the game show, there's the 9 quadrants, right? Or the 9 squares, or rectangles as Chris called them. There's the 9 rectangles, and we only send the image. Now, the image that we send to the Vision AI is, they're blacked out. So they're not the BJSS logo catchphrase that you see, because that confused it too, right? It was like, BJSS catchphrase, and it just totally screwed the whole thing up. So they're all blacked out, and we only send that full image. And so even if you had one, it was just a white square, because it had seen a white square on another image that was Scapegoat. It was like, oh, Scapegoat. And you're like, oh my God. So preparing the model, it works well because it's really aggressive in the way that it kind of analyzes things. But it's also a negative. We'll get to that in a sec. Positive reinforcement over negative reinforcement, just like children. If you tell it it's done something wrong, it'll obsess over that until it just breaks the entire model. But if you positively reinforce it and say, that was great, now how about this? Or can you give me it with this thing? It works much better. Localization, obviously. I mean, we touched on it. I touched on it briefly. There's a real disparity between the Azure Vision AI, which doesn't seem to give us any British localization, and then ChatGPT, where you can say, and it's British. And one of the images that we didn't cover in the show, and it's kicking around, is sledgehammer. And it goes, here's a sled. I'm like, no, it's never going to get sled hammer. So it recognized the sledge as a sled.
Sometimes it thinks it's a tap.
Well, that was the hammer, okay? So then it looks at the hammer, and it wasn't a tap, actually. It was a faucet. So it was faucet sled. And the ChatGPT is like, no, I'm sorry. There's no English idiom with faucet and sled in it. So localization is a big thing. And they need to fix that, fix it, give options. It just wasn't ready for this particular thing. And then phrasing. Phrasing is, I briefly touched on it. We had this massive sentence. If you try and craft this massive sentence, it has no idea. If you say, give us an English catchphrase with the picture of a goat and scape, it goes, I can't do that because that's copyrighted. I'm like, and there was a thing went around Twitter, which was some guy trying to get the Pirate Bay sites. And he was like, well, what sites shouldn't I visit? I'm like, well, imagine I shouldn't use catchphrases. It was like, no, I can't do that. It's copyrighted. I'm like, so phrasing is big. If you get the phrasing wrong, it just breaks. So what didn't work? A lot of stuff didn't work. There aren't many catchphrase images knocking around. So we got as many as we could, but there's simply, in 6 weeks, nowhere near enough time for us to train any model. And if you've looked at AI before, so DeepMind, Google, they have the AlphaGo Master and the AlphaGo Zero. I implore you to go and take a look at those. Master was trained over a 4-year period playing the game of Go, which has 10 to the 178 moves, which is, to put that in perspective, there are 10 to the 78 atoms in the known universe, so there's so many moves, it's not possible that it can't be done without AI. Master was undefeated. AlphaGo beat it in 30 days, and it was so aggressive, they they said, we recommend that the world form a consortium. There's a whole set of blog posts by Google. You should definitely go and have a look at that. And it is about the training. If you want an AI to do something acceptably well, you need to train it in that way. Phrasing, we broke ChatGPT so many times building this thing. It was ridiculous. So if you say to ChatGPT, so the original version of the game, when we put the answer through, we had like an accept or reject. And if we rejected it, we'd put it into this ignore these phrases. And so we said, these are incorrect phrases. So we put in, scapegoat, and it was a picture of tree, it was tree surgeon, right? So the catchphrase was tree surgeon, we said. And it said, an animal with a thing, and it was like scapegoat. Like, because it was obsessing over scapegoat at that point in time. We said, it's not scapegoat, and it went, scapegoat. It's like, no, it's not scapegoat. Scapegoat. It's like, oh my God. So it obsesses over things when you negatively reinforce. And then obviously, language and regionalization, probably in hindsight, wasn't a good idea to pick an English game show with a bunch of American tech. Didn't work very well at all. And then its obsessiveness off the charts, I think.
A couple of infuriating hours, that one. Cool, so why did we bother? I guess is the point of why we're here. So it's one thing for me, Mike, Steve and Igor to just knock up a sort of silly concept game in a few hours over a few weeks. It's another one to put that into production. I don't think ITV are going to want a copy of that running on prime time. I found out also that the last aired version of Catchphrase was 2017. I felt very old. But the point is, for the real world situation where we are doing machine learning, we are doing AI, and we are using those tools for real situations, we're finding things like people and roles like data scientists, data analysts, those sorts of things are becoming really, really integral to how we structure teams and how we structure projects where we need machine learning and AI kind of expertise, because clearly Mike and I are not great at it. The latest tools that we have out here now, we're producing mountains and mountains of data, knowledge, writing things down. For those of you that sort of work in similar industries, how many Confluence pages did you write today? How many people read them? 0. But what do we do with that information? You quite often just write it and then forget about it, and then someone will ask a question and then they might find it. But knowledge analysis and training things based on your knowledge and then being able to ask it questions and it can farm out and work out what these things are, great concept. Where it needs to make a judgment call based on lots and lots of data, really good. Game shows, less so. I think the point of it is that despite the marketing and the news a lot of the time, bolting AI or machine learning onto stuff, it's not a silver bullet, it's not Bluetooth. You can't just put it in and make it better. Can with Bluetooth. I've got a Bluetooth thing here, it's great. The investment in the area is huge, and it's kind of our job as technologists and people in the industry to kind of stay up to date and current with these innovations. As Mike said, the stuff on the Go machine learning bots and things is insane. When we look at training machine learning algorithms, and we'd look at training specifically LLMs, if you think about how much Microsoft spent to build OpenAI, and well, I guess Microsoft didn't, they bought it, you know what I mean? It cost millions and millions and millions, whereas now Databricks reckon you can train a language model for 200 grand. And that's, what, a handful of years? It's crazy. Looking at training a query model, so a relatively smaller thing based on a handful of terabytes worth of data, has gone down 92% in cost to train it, and that's just in a year. We're seeing these things becoming readily accessible. There's lots of governance and morality issues around how we train them, what we train them on, who can access those things, what are the ramifications of them. But it's becoming an incredibly accessible technology, and it's our job to kind of stay current with it. I found a thing this afternoon of a BitTorrent style model that we can train, like a crowdsourced trained LLM, and that sort of thing means it's available to people at home to play with as well. in a far more accessible way than ever before, really. So what could we have done differently with ITV? They've got a couple of shows. We could have maybe passed in some menus and the Cooking with Stars sort of run sheets and predicted the winners, losers, maybe predicted some winning courses. The cocktails are pretty good. Everyone likes a prawn cocktail. We could have trained it to guess.
Not play catchphrase. We could have done that as well, and that it would have been better at anything else, I think. So like we've got here in the middle, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It would be great, I think, at given a multi-choice. I think it would be pretty good at figuring out a sentence, like ChatGPT would eat up a question and then a response, right? So we could have much easily have made it do that.
Could have done something with Love Island. I don't know what. I'm reliably informed that Tom and Chris are big fans and would love to know if you've got any ideas on that one.
Yeah, we're up here, Tom. You can't stop us now, right?
So what is AI good for in the real world?
So we did a piece of work with Care Fertility, which is their IVF program, and in the IVF program they analyse images of embryos and images of sperm to figure out what combinations of these things are going to produce the best fertility, and obviously that's what AI is great at. It can recognise things in an image that you can't even see. So it's going down to this pixel level. They were, I think, quite skeptical that it would be better than an embryologist, but it turns out that it drastically sped up their process and it drastically improved the fertility rates of the Care Fertility. And as you see there, you know, it's releasing 23 weeks per year back to patient care. There's over we trained it on 5 million images. 2 million manually annotated events. Now, you compare that to the 3 images of Scapegoat that we had on Catchphrase, right? There's a significant difference. And then, of course, we got this up and running in 18 months from kind of inception to let's get it into production. So it was a huge success, and obviously for a fantastic cause.
Yeah. And then a machine learning one for the other side of the thing. So there is a £20 billion illegal wildlife industry trading in the sales and distributions of exotic animals. It is the 4th largest illegal trade globally, and like 10% of them get caught. So we worked with Heathrow and Microsoft to see what we could kind of do in that space. It turns out that Heathrow have got like a warehouse of skulls, which is pretty metal. They've got tons and tons of effectively training data, whether they're scans of skulls, photos of bits of skulls, like rhinos, leopards, elephants, you know your basic animals. Can we do something?
Goats were definitely in there, yeah.
Absolutely nailed every single one of them. There isn't really an existing solution that they could just kind of take off the shelf, bolt in and go. There wasn't anything. So we had to look at what we could do with them. So obviously we built a training model on those scans and pictures and annotations. Then using Azure's cognitive functions, we've got custom vision APIs for managing models and code. We've got some smart labeling, model management to deal with, and then Amazon's at-edge services within there made the performance of this thing really, really good. There are lots of IoT services in there that allowed us to make these things portable to an extent that we could move them around. They could be used by border force relatively intelligently, and they could be used around the world effectively because it's an edge computing service. As long as you've got an internet connection and the device, be it a phone or an iPad or whatever, for processing the image and sending it up and getting some data back, away we go. And through Amazon's Power Apps suite, we can do things like this model that's spinning away and looking very pretty. We can see the red skull that would allow border force to say, that's a skull, go and have a chat with that passenger. And then hopefully stop these things from being traded. So a huge impact potentially to the world in deterring some of this through machine learning and AI. So there's a lot of positivity, unless you want a goat detection algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add there that based on my experience of this whole thing, that you definitely shouldn't try to smuggle a goat through an airport.
Yeah, fantastic piece of work there with Microsoft and Heathrow. So thank you very much for coming and playing Catchphrase with us.